The Boat Biz podcast with the MRAA. We have some incredible content lined up for you with this podcast that we're going to be delivering industry updates, insights that boat dealers need to be aware of, opportunities that dealers can take advantage of, and our favorite part here at the MRAA, actionable ideas that you can implement. First and foremost priority for us in everything that we do here at the MRAA is to deliver on our mission. And that mission is really to recognize that if our industry is going to be successful, our dealers have to be successful. So we drive the success of our dealers. It's something we're very passionate about here. And the way that we look at things around here, it's always a great time to be in the boat biz. All right, welcome everybody to the 6th episode of the Boat Biz podcast. Great conversation lined up for you today. I want to set a little bit of a kind of a precursor to all of this. MRAA in the month of October is focused on what we call our spotlight topic of retaining employees. We know when it gets to be really difficult to find and hire employees, which we know the marketplace is providing us some challenges there these days, that the number one thing that we can do is focus on retaining our employees and making sure that we're delivering a great employee experience. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. I do want to call your attention. I'm going to share my screen. For those of you who are on Spotify, you'll be able to see sharing the screen. You can see the URL here is mraa.com/retain employees. And on this page, you're going to be able to find all kinds of resources, all kinds of information on things that we believe that will help you from the compensation study to there's a blog, a webinar, an online course that you can check out. We've got job descriptions, an employee handbook, all of that sort of thing that will allow you to do a better job of retaining employees, something that we hope we can help you do a better job of going forward. So make sure you check that out again, mraa.com/retain employees, and that'll be a great resource for you as you go forward. So let's jump into our conversation today. I am here with Jamie Haradine, the general manager and owner of Wakeside Marine in Elkhart, Indiana. I'm really excited for this conversation today. I think there's a lot of great insights that you're going to be able to take away from this. But Jamie, welcome.
Hi, Matt. It's great to be here and chat with you today.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Why don't you start us off today with just a little bit of a overview, personal background, kind of where'd you grow up, where'd you go to school, that sort of thing.
Okay, so Wakeside is located in Elkhart, Indiana. I'm actually born and raised here in Elkhart. Went to school here through high school, and then spent a year at Indiana University in Bloomington, and then transferred for my high school boyfriend out to Arizona State. And then we made our way back to Elkhart, and that's where we landed. And we've been here ever since. Spent a little time in the Bay Area, and that was a quick stint because we realized how expensive it was to live out there and the traffic. And we were just two Midwest kids that were pretty used to, our lifestyle here in Elkhart. And so we came back here, and we've been here ever since, raised two daughters here, and running a great dealership. So
awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm a Midwest guy myself, tried to move away to the coast, ultimately came back as well. So I know how that it pulls us back for sure.
Yeah.
So you went to school at IU and then in Arizona State.
Correct. Yeah.
For education?
Yes, I was an education major when I was at IU. I realized pretty quickly when I was at IU that, being 18 years old and getting thrown into a kindergarten classroom was not my thing. I was like, this is not for me. So when I transferred to Arizona State, I ended up being a psychology major with the intention that I would probably go on and do some sort of child psychology. My parents, for a very, very long time, wondered what the heck I was going to do with a psychology degree. I think it paid off because it pays off well in the workplace and through all the different career moves I've made in the last, 25, 30 years. But I was an education major at first, and then actually after the recession, I went back and got a master's in teaching, and so entered the teaching world at that time. Yep.
Wow. And what grade levels did you end up teaching?
So I started with fifth grade. I was, I don't know if I was fortunate enough or what that looked like. I went down to kindergarten for a year. It was not for me. I was very blessed to have one of my best friends who was a kindergarten teacher at that school. And so she kind of helped me along the way. But kindergarten is, you got to be a really special person to teach that grade level. And I landed in fourth grade, which was really a great age group for me. I liked teaching fourth grade a lot. So, yeah.
Awesome. And how long did you teach for?
I taught for about 5 years. I would say I probably started teaching. Like I said, I've had a multiple career moves. I was in pharma sales, did some insurance sales, stayed home with my girls. I was lucky enough when we first started the marina that I was able to stay home with our kids at that time. I think I started teaching probably back in, it was probably 2013, 14. I taught for about 5 years and then I made my transition over here. So,
Awesome. And so
yeah.
now at Wakeside Marine, tell us a little bit about, give us some of the demographics of the business, the size of the business, the brand you carry, number of employees, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we started Wakeside. We just actually had our 20th anniversary about 2 weeks ago. Jeff and his brother and another partner at that time started the business back in 2002. And slowly it's evolved. We've had lots of friends and family that have worked here over the years. My brother, friends from high school, family members. And we started with, I think it would be probably about 5 employees back in the early 2000s. At this point, we're probably up to a solid 20 and in season closer to 25. We carry nautique, we carry Barletta boats, and we carry South Bay pontoons. So,
Okay. Nice.
yeah,
Good mix.
yeah.
Good mix. Well, so 20 years ago, acquired the business. Uh,
Yep.
Give us a little bit of a snapshot of that decision-making process and how that all came to be and how you got involved with the marine business.
Yeah, so that high school boyfriend I mentioned earlier is actually Jeff, my husband. When we moved home here to Indiana, we were both at a spot where we were kind of trying to sort out what these jobs were going to look like for us and exploring different opportunities at that time. At that time, Wakeside was owned by a gentleman that had it. The name of the business was Simonson Lake Marina, and Jeff and his brother had been positioned and asked to run their storage program for that year. He was needing some assistance, and so Jeff and his brother kind of jumped on board with that as some extra income. We were young; we were 26, 27 years old at that time. Um, and so that's kind of how it all started. And then from there, Jeff and Greg decided that, this would be a great opportunity for them. They'd grown up on lakes their whole lives. Their family had, run a lodge up in southern Michigan, and they were lake kids. They had a nautique since the 80s, and it seemed like a good fit. So that's kind of how it all started. And then, from there, I wasn't really very involved at all. We had kids right away when we moved home. So as Jeff was working late hours here and starting a business, I was at home with the girls and, spending time with them. And so that was really, there were challenges with that, of course, because when your husband's not getting home till 10 or 11 o'clock at night and delivering boats till, the middle of the night hours, there were challenges. But now as we look back at it, we feel really fortunate that this all happened for us. So,
Yeah, that's great. So
yeah.
not technically on the payroll at the time, but definitely a
No.
part of the family business.
Yeah, definitely. I did a little title work here and there. They would be like, "Can you run up to the Secretary of State and take this paperwork?" And I'd push a baby in there with the stroller, and was involved on a very minimal level. I mean, it's funny because when I actually did come over to Wakeside full time in 2017, some of the staff was like, they've been here a long time. I mean, we've had some staff here that well over 10 years.
Yeah.
10, 15 years plus. And they're like, we've seen Jamie maybe a handful of times, like 5. I was not at Wakeside ever. Either I was with the girls or I had my own job. And so I got bits and pieces of stuff at the dinner table, like you said.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about how that worked. I mean, as a family business, certainly
Yeah.
comes home. You certainly participate on some level, as you've explained. But what do you
Sure.
learn about the business over the years? You're in your career. You're doing your thing. You're raising the kids,
Yeah.
bringing home probably the challenges and things from the business. What do you learn about the business over the years?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, as anybody knows who runs a boat dealership or owns a boat dealership, there's a lot of challenges. There's customer challenges, your employee challenges. I think, just growing pains in general. Like you're starting pretty small, you're developing yourself. Wakeside was, it didn't have a bad reputation, but it had a different reputation. We brought Nautique on right away. And so Jeff would come home and just exhaustion, from just being here for lots and lots of hours. Fortunately, by the time I came on board, we had gotten through a lot of that. There were things that, needed to get changed and tweaked, but, um, you know, Jeff, even to this day, when we get home, we don't discuss business too often. I mean, occasionally I bark at him about a couple things, but overall, it's pretty much when we're done with work, we're done with work, and we just kind of go home and enjoy that. So,
Right.
yeah.
Interesting. So, Jeff has transitioned, of course, over to taking over the reins at Barletta.
Yeah.
You and I first met when that transition was about to start, and
Yeah.
we met, and he introduced you, and he said she's going to run this business way better than I ever did or ever could, and so forth. So, talk a little bit about what your thoughts were as you were making the transition uh, from teaching and
Teaching.
so forth
Yeah.
into running the dealership.
Yeah, it was an interesting time for us. Jeff had been presented with this opportunity. Bill Fennick had been a longtime customer of ours. And I'm going to be real honest here. I was on summer break, right? Like teaching was done. It was May. We broke for the summer, and about 2 weeks into that, Bill came to Jeff and said, I'm thinking about starting a pontoon business, and I really want you as a consultant level to come on board with me. And we felt together as we sat at home and discussed it, it was a great opportunity. But what was going to happen with Wakeside? That was the next question. We didn't want to leave it here without someone involved on a level that was, someone in the family that made sense for us. So we kind of sat on our back porch, talked about it a lot. What are we going to do? Selfishly, I was like, hey, I'm on summer break. I don't really want to start working again right now. I don't have to go back to school till August. So Jeff said, well, why don't you go in there a couple days a week and help out a little bit and get a feel for it? We needed a little assistance with some parts receiving and such. So I came in, couple days a week, and then quickly within probably a week it started to full time very fast. And Jeff was spending 100% of his time over at Barletta. And the staff was like, what is happening? Who are you? Where did you come from? We thought you were a teacher and now you're here full time. So the good news was I knew a lot of them already, right? So we had spent time together at different offsite water events and such, but they didn't know me as a management level, what this was going to look like for a change. So we had to, really kind of work through that a little bit, because from an employee's perspective, especially somebody who's been here for 10 plus years, they're looking at me like, who are you? You're just this fourth grade teacher over here who's going to come in and tell me how to do things. But, all in all, fast forward 5 years, and I think it's been really successful. And I do remember our dinner meeting that we had. I couldn't remember if it was right before I came over or at the time. And one of the things that sticks out to me is I think at that point you were really encouraging Jeff to do certification as a dealer, and we hadn't done it yet. And so, I was listening and taking it all in, and you were kind of explaining the program. And to me, I had sat on some boards at the school that I was on that was getting, if you want to call it, certified or accredited at that time. And so it all made sense to me, like why we would want to do this.
Right.
And mentally, when I left that dinner that night, I thought to myself, you know what, we're going to do this. We're going to get this certification done and become a certified dealer. So,
Yeah. And great.
yeah.
That's awesome. And we'll talk a little bit about the employee satisfaction survey that has been a part of that program and that you guys have been doing very well with over the years. Talk a little bit about that leap from being a teacher to becoming a dealership principal. You touched on briefly the need to demonstrate leadership capability, management capability, the trust that you'd need to develop in the team. Talk about
Yeah.
that leap. Like, so what were some of the challenges? What were some of the things that you learned along the way, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it was a big leap. There were a couple times that I quit the job within the first month at home. And I told Jeff, you can have this job back. I'm quitting. I think the biggest challenge was just understanding the systems, right? Like I had never understood how, the Doc Master, which is our software system, how that worked. I didn't even know how to get on there. I didn't have a login. I mean, just the basics. I wasn't too worried about the staff and the people. I knew I'd sort that out over time. I knew that psychology degree that my parents were worried about would pay off somewhere in life. And so, because I had run a classroom, there's some similarities, right? Like I had 30 kids in my classroom. Now I have 20 adult employees that I need to try to lead. So I wasn't real concerned about that. The customers, I had a pretty good handle on a lot of the customer base because I knew their names from different things, or they were families that we've known for a long time. So I felt pretty comfortable there. It was more the processes, understanding kind of the basics. I mean, to the level of what's the difference of a hydraulic trailer versus a float on trailer? I don't know. There's those kinds of things. So that took a little bit of time. And like I said, I was hired as a parts receiver. And then all of a sudden within a week, I'm like pushed into general manager. So, the great news is we have an incredible staff, and they really helped me because they knew I was in a spot that I needed their help. So instead of putting up a wall and saying, we don't want to work for this lady, who is she? They were very supportive of me the whole time and just kind of helped guide that process. So
That's awesome. So
yeah,
you touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to really kind of ask managing a classroom,
yeah, sure.
to managing employees. What are the structural things or the leadership approaches that you take in whichever scenario it might be, and how you lead and how you make sure that you gain the trust and the confidence of the people that you're leading?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was lacking a little bit here was procedural, just processes. And not only was I able to bring some of what I knew into it, but the certification process helped that too, right? There's a lot of processes that the MRAA, when you go through certification, it just gets you thinking, like, are we doing this right? What does this look like? I had just had in 2015, a lot of Google Classroom training. So what we were doing at Wakeside was we were at that spot where we were growing and we were getting beyond Drew, who's been here for 15 years at this point, and he's run the yard and all the boats and knows all the customers, and he knows where the boats go when they come in for winterization and all that. We were getting to a point where he can't just know that. We're getting too many boats here. We don't have 100 boats anymore. Now we have 350, 500. So we had to put some processes in place that one of the big things we changed was we had always had Doc Master, and we used that like the Bible for work orders and accounting and inventory, but we didn't have a lot of great processes with when boats are coming in for winterization. We pick up over 300 boats a year for storage. So one person kind of holding all the information to themselves wasn't working real great. So we needed to open everybody's eyes up and let them see what our schedule was going to look like that week. What kind of notes is that customer going to leave their lift key, under a planter on their back porch? Because when my guys get there to pick up the boat, they need that information. And if it's just on a sticky note at somebody's desk, it's not going to happen. And there's going to be a lot of frustration. So we implemented some of those processes. And that's kind of how a classroom runs efficiently. You got to have processes in place. So that part, and not that we didn't have processes, but just dialing them in and making everybody, including the yard guy that's bailing water off of a cover of a boat. Why is this important? So getting everybody engaged in that.
Yeah, That's great. I'm looking around here, realizing that maybe I should I've got all kinds of post-it notes and things that are keeping notes for me. So maybe I need to
Oh, I got those too, for sure.
change my systems as well.
Yeah.
Well, so you're clearly very good at this, and you're very good at creating that culture and so forth. And so a little bit of a backdrop for our listeners. MRA produces each year what it calls the great dealerships to work for. And the great dealerships to work for are based on the scores that our certified dealers receive in anonymous employee satisfaction surveys. So MRAA conducts the survey on behalf of Wakeside in this case, on behalf of the other certified dealers. We gather the scores, and out of those scores, we can determine a rating of the top great dealerships to work for. And last year, you were in the top 10. Congratulations for that. I know we're compiling everything for this year, and those announcements will be made at Dealer Week this year. But I've looked through your surveys and your survey results, and they're very impressive all the way around. I mean, consistently above average scores from an industry perspective. What I don't know if you can boil it down, but what's the secret that you have? And I'm gonna share some comments here with our listeners from the reports that I think are extremely impressive. But what's the secret to developing employee satisfaction, employee engagement, retaining employees, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, Matt, I'm not sure there's a secret really. I wish there was, right? But I think for us, we treat every employee like a family member. So, and I think you'll see that. I mean, I know that occasionally on that survey, which I love that survey, I really look forward to it every single year, because things change throughout the year, right? Like things happen. I've been a little bit less involved here. I had a medical situation back in March, so I was gone for a period of time, and then I kind of stepped back. And I'm, not at Wakeside every day. I'm not here 6 days a week like I was. And so for me, this year was really important because there's been some other employees at Wakeside that have kind of stepped up and taken some leadership. And so it was really eye-opening for me and great to read these survey results this year, because I didn't know if things were going to change. Do the employees still feel the way they felt last year at this time? The great news is I think so. Everybody really, I think, believes that they have a voice, and that's important. So, listening to the employees, sitting down with them one-on-one, I try to make it a point when I'm here to go outside, go out to the back, talk to the technicians. How's it going? I think what sometimes gets forgotten, these guys have families, they've got lives, they've got things going on outside of Wakeside. And I try to make that a really important factor. And Jeff did too. And anybody who's been here at a leadership level has always taken that position with our staff. We do a lot of employee events throughout the year. We try to do a monthly lunch that we bring in and cater for our employees. And that goes a long way. I mean, just some pizzas, on a Friday. We do at the end of the year. We just had our end of the year event. We host for our employees and their spouses or significant others a day at our house, and we do a big catered cookout. And this year we did a clam bake, and the staff took out the boats, and it's just a really good time. Bonfire, and just a team building event, but not structured necessarily. So that, and then one of the things that we implemented was, and I think I probably got this from one of our 20 group members, but we mark every single person's birthday on our calendar. And when their birthday comes up, so in October, if it's your birthday, you buy something off of any of the manufacturer websites as apparel goes, or any of our Wakeside apparel. And I personally write them a birthday card, and that's kind of their birthday gift. It does two things. It gets them wearing Wakeside apparel or manufacturer apparel that we like to always have on at Wakeside. And a lot of times employees don't want to purchase that themselves. So it's a nice birthday gift. And then, in addition, they're wearing it and supporting our brands, or our brand Wakeside. So
Right. That's great.
yeah.
I love the simplicity of I try to talk to everybody every day. I try to go out to the yard and connect with everybody, have a one-on-one conversation with them. A lot of times, as you suggested, a lot of times people think there's this grand secret or plan or
Yeah.
orchestrated system, and a lot of times it's just simply talking to them about their families or what happens
Yeah.
outside of the dealership.
Yeah.
So I was going to try to dive into some of the specific tactics, but let's just look at some of these comments that came out of the employee satisfaction survey. I've got a small handful here, but a quote: "I've never worked for another company that makes employee satisfaction such a high priority. The owners go above and beyond to make Wakeside a fun place to work. The management and the owners are so amazing. They go above and beyond daily to encourage and aid their staff. I love the energetic atmosphere here. We come in, we amp each other up, and we get it done." I love that one.
Yeah,
Uh,
I like that one too. That's fun.
and to your point, there were some in here that everyone is treated like family, right? And that
Yeah.
right here in there. Um, and my favorite here at the end: "I've never had a better group of owners and management at any other workplace. They really do more than required in making their staff feel valued. It's a great workplace." I mean, kudos.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I
Yeah,
love.
it's awesome. And we have a great staff. I feel really fortunate. The reason we're successful is because of them, right? Like those guys, girls, they come in daily, they put their heart into it. And I mean, I think it says a lot about the people that work here at Wakeside for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So one other comment that I noted in here, and then a question related to it. There was a comment in here that says, "I've seen this dealership improve and really become something special, and I'm proud to work here." What do you think you've personally brought into the dealership that has added something new, something different, that has continued that improvement mindset that the dealership has? What have you brought into it personally?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know really because I think one of the things is just organization. I am pretty anally organized about stuff to the point that I think sometimes the staff is like, how did she remember that? I mean, it's a crazy thing I do, and I'm sure other people do it too, but I'll send an email to call it the service team, have we followed up with this guy, blah, 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 make sure that this is handled, yada, yada. They'll say back, yep, we're working on this. And I'll schedule an email to myself 2 weeks out to remember to follow up with them and make sure that that was handled. And they're like, how did you remember that from 2 weeks ago? But those, I don't put it on a calendar anywhere. I just schedule sending that email to myself. So I think organization is something we can always work to get better, even in that area. I mean, this time of year drives me crazy because we are limited on space with inside our fenced area, and it's very disorganized because we have so many boat drop-offs and pickups, and we're in the heat of winterization right now. And when I pull in here, I'm just like, oh, this is so crazy unorganized for me. So that's something that we need to continue and improve on and work through as far as like mapping out some of the organization outside. But I think, the staff at Wakeside has always felt from day one. I think if you go back, I mean, we have a technician who retired from here a few years ago. And he's like family to us. We laugh. We said, you were bought with the building. I mean, he came with Simonson Lake Marina, and he comes in here twice a week still. We give him hell sometimes about stuff, and he does the same to us. But I think the employee satisfaction has always been there. I can't speak for it directly because I wasn't here for a lot of years, but I say if there's one thing, it might just be that organizational piece that, as a teacher, you got to be pretty organized. So
Yeah, for sure. Has there been anything that you've learned over the years from the employee satisfaction survey, things that you've learned about how what employee preferences there might be, or how to manage, or how to develop employees, or anything along those lines?
yeah, I mean, I think when I first started here, well, when we first got certified, the first year of the employee satisfaction, I didn't really know what to expect, what was going to happen, what those results were going to look like. There was obviously some uncertainty with the employees. Jeff's now been here forever. Now he's working over at the manufacturer. What's this going to look like for our staff? especially the people who had been here for a long time. So again, it goes back to building that trust with them. So some of those things popped up on that survey, that was like questioning a little bit what our position was with Wakeside, what it was going to look like, and what their job looked like for them. So I think me knowing that was being voiced onto a survey was helpful, because it just reiterated how important it was to, reiterate that we were here for the long haul. We were in this, we weren't looking to get out of it by any means. It was kind of an opportunity for me at that time too, because to go back to the teaching thing, I had some very challenging groups of kids for a couple of years, where I had a lot of IEP special needs in my classrooms, and I was worn out. So I was kind of looking for a change a little bit anyway. So this was like that new challenge for me. So reading those survey results, there were some things I knew that I had to work through, and take to heart. And I really do read through those surveys a lot, and try to understand where, and it is anonymous, like you said, so I can't pinpoint down to who that person was. But we've addressed some things in a group when we go through the meeting to review everything. Sometimes we'll talk about, okay, this was brought up in the survey and I'm concerned about this. So, I know someone in here voiced this concern. We need to get to a spot where this person doesn't feel this way. Right. And very rarely is there negative stuff, but occasionally there's some things that pop up on there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a touchy thing, right? I mean, because it is
It
anonymous,
is.
and you don't want to single anybody out, but you also want to address the issues. So
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
a great way to do it. I'm curious, over, the last 3 years have been just wildly out of control, crazy, in
Yeah.
the boat market. How did the culture change or not over those last few years?
It's been, it's been wild. I mean, as every boat dealership out there in that March and April of 2020, who knew what was going to happen? The gates were closed and all of us were going, oh man, what is this going to look like? And then boom, it's just a massive surge. Right. That we as an entire staff have to work through. I think the biggest thing in that regards would be our service department and our sales department for a very long time operated pretty independently. I mean, sales was sales, service did their thing. And we needed to kind of bridge that gap, because as much as, sales needs service, service needs sales. So one of those things was during this whole COVID thing, we had to really, really communicate well between sales and service, because if that boat's getting delivered by the sales on a Wednesday, and we haven't rigged it yet for whatever reason that is on a Monday or Tuesday, that needs to be in services world. And so we really all had to work together as a team to get everything accomplished, because the amount of boat sales going out of here at that time, we needed services help tremendously to make that happen. So I think overall, just that communication and that teamwork is what has made us get through it all, because I know it's been a challenge. I mean, it's a whirlwind, and we're very grateful for all the boat sales, and very fortunate for the growth we've had in the last couple of years. But it does put a lot of stress and pressure on the team to be able to deliver at the levels that we want to deliver.
Right. And how about do you feel like that organization that you brought to the dealership and the higher level of communication, you feel like those were instrumental in helping to navigate it all?
I do. I think, our sales department is small. There's 2 full-time sales guys, or a gal and a gentleman down there. Mike McKelly has been with us for a long, long time, and he had been just moved to sales when I came on board. So he was trying to navigate this himself. I mean, he had been parts and pro shop for a long time, probably 8 years. But I mean, at that time when I came on, they were using this little whiteboard outside of their office. It was like a weekly calendar that they would, put on there in expo marker what was getting delivered. And I said to them, well, that's great that you guys understand what's getting delivered, but does service have any idea that this is getting delivered? Because how are you going to make sure that boat's cleaned, ready, prepped? And they kind of looked at me like, well, we just figure it out. And I'm like, that's not going to work in the schedule. So Starting a whole kind of communication where the sales department, now the sales team will tell you they get a little annoyed with me sometimes. And Mike will ask if I have stock ownership in Google, because am I getting paid by them because of him forcing him to put stuff on a Google sheet or, send a rig request. He was in the habit and used to walking up to our service counter and saying verbally, hey, I need that boat rigged that's here in the showroom. Well, what's the stock ID of that boat? Where is it? When is it getting delivered? I need you to send a formal emailed rig request to service so they can file it and schedule it accordingly. And I mean, that was like, what are you asking me to do? But I think, looking back, if we had him in the room with us, he would say it made sense. It was hard to change those habits you were used to. But in the long run, the payoff was a lot better because the boat was clean and ready before he was going to deliver it at noon instead of at 11 o'clock in the morning trying to rush through and getting everything done.
Right.
So I do think that some of that organization, as much as people want to fight it sometimes, it helps in the long run.
Right. Absolutely. So we talked about this a little bit at the outset of how the conversations at home as you're acquiring the marina and so forth.
Yeah.
Jeff's now over at the manufacturer, one of the brands that you sell, of course. I'm super curious about what are those conversations around the dinner table like today? Like how are you navigating those day to day?
Yeah. Well, I've been told multiple times that I'm probably the biggest pain in the ass dealer there is. So I don't know if I can say that, but yeah, it's probably easier for me than Jeff because I voice my concerns on things quite frequently. Like I said, I do try to leave it alone and not talk too much at home about it. Our sales rep for Barletta, Chris Stockbridge, who's amazing. He's great. I think sometimes he's like, oh, how do I handle this? I got to deal with Jamie, but then I got to deal with Jeff over here. I'm right in the middle. And so we've had some interesting conversations for sure on things. We don't always agree. Sometimes, I'm not always right. They're not always right. But I do think that Barletta, Nautique, and South Bay, all of them are great business partners. And so, as a dealership, when you voice a concern or a positive for that matter, I think that it goes a long way. And they do take into consideration, you would hope, and I believe they take into consideration the feedback they're getting. So.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, we know that there can oftentimes be tension in the dealer manufacturer relationship, and that's a key part of the whole business. What do you feel like you've learned having Jeff work on that side now and working on this side? What do you feel like you've learned about that relationship and how to make it successful?
I try not to be too critical. There's some things, of course, as we've gone through COVID, and as every dealership, when we sit in 20 groups, talk about for every manufacturer, there's been some quality situations where we've gotten boats and they haven't been as clean as what they normally have been in the past, or they're short ship stuff because their supplier doesn't have the part that needs and the boat continues to get shipped to us regardless. Motors this past spring were a very big challenge for us. When you have retail customers who have the expectation that the boat is going to deliver to them by Memorial Day because they bought the boat at the boat show back in January, and then the boat's here, but there's no motor to be found and we have no time frame on that. That can be a little challenging because, as I heard it in a 20 group meeting not too long ago, we're the triage. The customer's coming to us for immediate relief and answers. And when you don't have answers on where the product is, it makes it difficult. I would say all of our manufacturers have really stepped up, and if they need to make a call to a retail customer, they have, because sometimes it gets to that spot where we've said as much as we can say, and I think the manufacturer getting involved, and very few times has this happened, but we did have a few instances from every manufacturer where we had to say, hey, we need your help. Like, we need you guys to get involved and explain why we don't have a motor or why this boat hasn't shipped yet, because it's being held for whatever reason. So I think that's what I've learned, is just that communication between the dealership and the manufacturer is very important. And just trying to work through those challenging situations together is better than not.
Right. Absolutely.
Did that answer your question? I hope it did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's a great perspective, and just super curious on how that evolves and what the different perspectives are on that. So, so we'll kind of start wrapping up here, but kind of the last comment that I wanted to share from the employee satisfaction survey was one of your employees noted that, the constant improvements and the dedication to making the business grow has been something that they've really valued. Now that you've been doing this for a few years, you're in the groove. What's next? What do you see as where Wakeside is going and how you're going to take it there?
Yeah, I think, I looked at our numbers about a month ago, and I went back to 17 and where we are now. And, COVID has been very good for us in some ways, the boat industry in general. We're pushing to be a $10 million dealer, which I would have never guessed that back in 17. So I feel really fortunate for that. We have done a lot of improvements. We've bought a lot of new trucks. We're in the process of excavating and building on a property that was purchased back in 2012 that's just north of our current fenced-in area. We had sat on it for a long, long time, just to try to decide what the right move was on that. We, are in the process of building probably 3 to 4 storage buildings out there, because we're at a spot where we're just maxed out on inside storage. Our technicians have, for a long time, years and years and years, had asked for some sort of roof covering area. So when it's raining, snowing, whatever that looks like, that they can work outside of the elements. And we were able to put that up a year ago. We poured concrete just in the past 30, 40 days. Eventually that will be a closed-in service shop. Our shop that we have that's existing is extremely old. And these boats that have, sitting on trailers with towers and arches and all of this, they barely fit in that shop. So we're at a spot where we have to continue to grow, improve equipment. And I think that's kind of the plan for Wakeside. I'd like to see eventually that service shop be closed in and just continued growth, for us. So it's pretty exciting. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great story. I love hearing it. Well, I'm out of my list of questions. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about today?
I don't think so. I think we're probably good. I hope I answered everything the way that you thought I was going to answer it. I'm not a big fan of these podcasts, but
I had no preconceived notions on how you should answer anything like that. Like I said, I just really enjoy having the conversation and hearing your story and how you've brought a mentality into the dealership, and it's been wildly successful. So congratulations.
It's been fun, and we're really humbled by the opportunities we've been given and the staff that we have that just make it a great place to come to work every day, right? I enjoy being here. So
yeah, it makes a huge difference.
It does, for sure.
Well, congratulations on all of that.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, you bet. So thank you everybody for joining us for today's podcast, the Boat Biz Podcast. You can check out on mraa.com/retain employees. There's going to be lots of resources there for you to tap into, some of the things that can help you build a culture, a strong culture, a rewarding culture for your team and for your employees. If you are interested in getting involved with that employee satisfaction survey, please just reach out to me anytime, and we can get you dialed in. It's just simply matt@mraa.com. If there's anything else that MRA can do to support you, that's what we are here to do. Please reach out anytime. Jamie, thank you again for the great conversation today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll see you in Austin in in a month or so, right?
Yeah, a little over a month. It's fast. So looking forward to
sure.
that for sure.
Yep. Sounds good.
Thanks again for joining us. And that's episode 6 of the Boat Biz Podcast. Thank you.